Hello, my name is Joakim. I'm with you tonight to tell you a joke, of which you probably just read a worse version, so you already know the punchline. Well, this is the story about Johnson, and he knew everybody. It's not the story about Dave. Who cares about Dave? What kind of name is that? It's the guy from like Dave. No, his name has always been Johnson. I mean, I've been telling this joke for over 20 years, and his name has always been Johnson. And you can vary it out. I mean, you can change out who he knows and so on, so you can sort of custom it to the crowd you're telling it for. On imgur, it was Tom Cruise and the President Obama. And I will use the same, of course. So, at work, Bob from accounting started to get annoyed at Johnson, because no matter what they talk about and who they would mention, Johnson claimed to know them. If it was a new soccer player who was sort of doing all these amazing things this Sunday, Johnson learned him to play. Of course, he taught him soccer. Yeah, Johnson, you know. And one day they were talking about Tom Cruise, and Johnson was like, I actually knew Tom Cruise. I mean, I grew up in New Jersey. We took acting classes together. I mean, this was, of course, before he was known, but, I mean, he's a nice guy. And Bob was like, I don't think you do. I mean, we're in Sweden. Why would you know Tom Cruise? I mean, you don't even got an American accent or anything. And Johnson would fiddle with his cell phone for a bit and then produce images of Tom Cruise doing things and him and Tom Cruise together. And they sort of had to back off on that because, I mean, what more can you do? He seemed to either know Tom Cruise or to be fascinated by him and edit himself into pictures. Who really wants to go into that? It's sort of creepy. A couple of weeks later, they were talking about President Obama, and Johnson was like, yeah, I mean, I know the President of the United States of America, Obama. I mean, we keep correspondence. And Johnson was like, no, not Johnson. Of course, Bob was like, I don't believe you, Johnson. You're shitting me. You don't know the President of the United States of America. And Johnson was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I was hanging out a lot with Obey, you know, the graffiti artist, when he made the portrait, change all that. And in the commotion, of course, they got to meet each other. I was there. Me and the President, we've been speaking on and off for the last 8 years. And he produced his cell phone. He actually wanted to make a call this time. It took a while, he had to speak with some people, but eventually he turned on the speakerphone, and there was the President, Obama, greeting them, the office workers. And Bob from accounting, of course, he had to withdraw also this battle as losing, because, I mean, it was only over the phone, so who knows if it actually was Obama or not, but Johnson seemed to know him. And Bob, he really couldn't let go of this. He would stay awake at night. It would sort of consume him. And one day he cornered Johnson by a water cooler, and he was like, Johnson, I got this one guy that I would bet that you don't know. And Johnson was like, but dude, I'm Johnson. I know a lot of people. You know that. And Bob was like, yeah, but you don't know the Pope in Rome. And Johnson was like, I'm sorry, dude, you lose. I know Francis. I mean, we only met twice, but we really hit it off. I'm sorry I don't got his number or anything, so I can't really call him or email him or something like that. So I don't know how to prove it to you, but I do know him. And Bob sort of said, did you know the last Pope as well? And Johnson said, yeah, but I mean, Benedictus, he was sort of douche, and actually Francis is a much nicer guy. And since summer was coming up, and the office would close for 4 weeks, and they wanted to take out their vacation, as we do in Sweden, Bob said, all right, let's book a trip to Rome this summer, you and me. And if you can arrange a meeting with the Pope, prove to me that you know him, I will pay for your entire trip. And if you don't, you will pay for my trip, of course. Johnson accepted, since he claimed to know the Pope. I mean, what else was he going to do? And also, I mean, a holiday in Rome is always a holiday in Rome. So they went, and it was sort of great seeing all these old sites, the Spanish Stairs, the Colosseum, having a good espresso at the desk and all that stuff that you do in Rome. After a few days, Bob said, "You know, the Pope he's giving a speech to the masses today. We should go see it and see if you can actually meet him and prove to me that you know him, that you said you did." So they go down to the Vatican, and they stand on the square outside, and the Pope opens the balcony doors. He steps out. The crowd goes wild. Pope Benedict begs them to quiet down, and he starts giving a speech about which parts of being a good person really matters to him, and not only based on the Catholic virtues, because I mean he's quite a good guy, Pope, so it's not only about purity, it's also about being a nice fella. And after a while, balcony doors opens, and someone else steps out. Bob looks around him and can see he can't see Johnson anywhere, and of course it's Johnson on the balcony. The Pope looks like he's about to lose his temper, but then he recognizes him and says, like, "Oh, Johnson, it's great that you're here." They hug, and he's like, "This is the guy I'm talking about. You should try to be more like Johnson." And then he keeps going on with his speech, and finishes it up, and so on. Johnson tries to wave to Bob, but I mean, it's kind of hard to see if in particular facing the crowd. And afterwards they meet up at the bar, and Bob is devastated. He's clearly lost something. Not his marbles, but he sits there like the loser that he actually is, because Johnson knew the Pope. And Johnson's like, I mean, what's the problem? I mean, you're in accounting, you're okay money-wise. This isn't the world's biggest loss to you, of course. I mean, we're still gonna have a couple of nice days before we go back, and Bob's like, I mean, yeah, it's not that. It's not about the money. I mean, when you were holding the speech, this guy walked up to me and he said that he was a hermit, and that he had been meditating in a cave and hadn't spoken to a person for several years before coming to Rome this weekend. And he said, "I recognize Johnson, but who's the guy in the funny hat next to him?" And that's the way to tell the story. I mean, not Dave and his boss. I mean, Dave and his boss. Blah, 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 blah. It's Johnson and Bob from accounting. Thank you and good night.